To my sister, through magic grease, shall we lead on the top where two meet? We'll form a circle, hold hands and chant. Everyone what
Hi, Blessed Samhain. I see someone there. Hi, welcome. Behind us, we have my lovely Samhain wreath. I make these wreaths. I have been making these wreaths for a long time, for every Sabbath, and I update them. This hasn't been updated yet since last year, but that's the general idea of what I do. There's a little skeleton in there hanging on the side. Needs to be fixed, but we will. Anyway, hello there. How are you? Good to see you. I'm glad you came. Thank you. Thanks. So here we are, and we're going to talk about the Celtic holiday, or the Wiccan holiday of Samhain. I'm going to write it in the comments. That's how you spell it, Samhain, and it's pronounced like this, Samhain, or some people say Samhain, but I studied Gaelic for a little while, and I asked my teacher, and he was very clear about telling me it was Samhain. So Samhain, that's it. It is not spelled like that, and Gaelic is an odd kind of a mixture of letters, and some of the times they're silent. So that's why the MH is a W in Gaelic. So that's what that MH in the middle of, it looks like Samhain in English, but it's not, Samhain. So it's a day of Celtic, it's a Celtic holiday, but it's not the only place in the world that this Day of the Dead, or this kind of a place where we announce that the veil between the living and the dead is thin. This is certainly not the only thing that it's Celtic, but Wicca, a little history of Wicca will come up, and the first I'll tell you about me. Hi, if you don't know me, and this is your first time with me, I do these webcasts. Hopefully I get to them every week on different subjects and different areas of study that I do. And I have, this is part of the Pagan Path study group, and you can join that group, and I do put stuff in there in between and people discuss, and we have this event listed up in there, and it's also there always. These events are in almost all my groups, and I am I'm the Magic Apothecary. I have a website and study groups, and been doing this for quite a long time. I also make products for people and make spells for people. I'm a tarot reader and astrologer and witch. So here I am. That's a funny word to use on the internet, but I have, and many people do. And what does that mean? What is a witch, right? What is Wiccan? Let's start with that real quick first, and then we'll go on to the holiday more and what we can do. I decided to do these free of charge because I think there's a lot of weird misrepresentation of this path of spirituality out there. Also because all I really kind of find on the internet is airy-fairy Wicca, which to me is people dressing up like witches and wearing black lipstick and calling themselves witches because they wear enchanted eyeshadow. That's cool. I do too. You know, I like to do that kind of stuff. I like to express my inner thing on the outside. I'm wearing here this lovely t-shirt my husband Jay got for me. It's the representation of death taking over life, and that's exactly what we're talking about in chiller theater, but a lot of horror films and a lot of symbolism from especially the medieval times or Victorian times too, is about exactly what we're going to talk about today, the dark half of life, which is death. Anyway, so that's why I do these, and you can more than free to pass these on. They're on YouTube as well. I put them up on YouTube on my channel. You can subscribe to my channel, and then you can just listen to them anytime you want, take notes. You are always welcome as a student or just a listener to get back to me and ask questions. Please be polite. Some people are not, but I'm sure you guys are fine, but you're more than welcome to write me, ask me questions about stuff. I can try to help you or direct you in a place if I don't know the answer, or do some research for you on something. I always like to learn, and questions are always a great challenge. Okay, so that's who I am. So Samhain. Which tradition is older, folkish, pagan, or Wicca? Pagan, folkish, pagan, of course. Wicca is a newer religion. Yulia, am I saying that correctly? If I don't, tell me. Yulia, I think I've got it right. That's a beautiful name. So Wicca is a construct of a man named Gerald Gardner, who was a British man who ran something called the Witches' Museum. And in the 1950s in England, they removed a sort of ban on witchcraft, which meant mostly fortune tellers or people who told, like gypsy fortune tellers and stuff like this, tarot readers. And they removed ban on witchcraft. So from the Witches' Museum, which he ran, he started publishing books and started running a coven. He said he was initiated into a coven in something called the Black Forest Coven in England, and nobody knows if that's true or not, but he said he was given a traditional British Wiccan background, witchcraft background, a folk witchcraft background, and then he went ahead and had been a part of something called the OTO, and knew Aleister Crowley, and sort of mixed up a bunch of things, high magic and Egyptian magic and Italian magic and some British magic, and made something called Wicca. Wicca, or witche, is a British word or an English word, old English word, that means to bend one's will, or to bend with one's will. So that's Wicca. And that's the younger of the two. Yes, by far. By far. If we talk about what is sorcery or witchcraft, that's a big umbrella, and I'll go into that briefly before we go into the holiday a little more. This is prehistoric. I mean, people have believed forever in a way that they can take their will and make things happen because of it, because they saw that that was possible. And over time, things became apparent to humans that, oh, if I use this kind of a crystal, or if I use these herbs, or if I use this incantation, all of this adds to my energy of creating what I wish. There's a lot of bad around the idea of this, because if you can make a spell, you can make a spell both for good or for bad. You can harm people if you choose to. And if we're talking straight up Wicca, then their first tenet of Wicca is, and it harm none, do what thou wilt. Love is the law, love under will. That's also Aleister Crowley talking about his thelemic version of magic. And a lot of this stuff gets thick, and you are, I hope that if you've come to this little webcam class, that you're a serious explorer. So please take some time and look all those things up. Thelema, I'll put that in the comments. I spelled Aleister wrong, but you can figure it out. All right, so those things, and the history of folk magic, as I said, it goes back to before anyone knew there was magic. It just was something you did. And also, things like helping someone give birth was considered the realm of witches or midwives, which were also witche or witches, medicine, herbalism, hands-on healing, such as what we call now, and from Japan, Reiki, meditation, divination, was all under the umbrella of people who had special or trained because of, a lot of the times, lineage in special arts like these. Some people were taught as children to divine using pendulums or tea leaves or palm reading or astrology sort of. Astrologers were in great demand through many, 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 many thousands and thousands of years. And kings and queens used their work to see what they should do next, kind of an advisor to the monarch. And also tribal leaders used stars, used seers, tellers, oracles. You can find the word oracle in every Greek drama and history that there is. So it's been since the beginning of time. So no, Wicca, W-I-C-C-A, is not folk magic, although it incorporates some of it. Not all Wiccans are witches. Let's put it this way. When you take an initiation as a Wiccan and you follow the path Gerald Gardner laid down, then you are calling yourself a witch. By the time you finish your 3rd degree, that's what you call yourself. That doesn't mean all witches are Wiccan. That's a very big confusion. People who are pagan and or use magical work can be under many different umbrellas of types of folk magic or different kinds of magical arts. Some people are what they call American eclectic, and that means they just take something from somewhere and use it because they're American, and that's what we tend to do, blend things together. There's British traditional witchcraft, which is really kind of sort of Wiccan, but goes beyond that. There's Celtic, Irish witchcraft, Scottish witchcraft, African witchcraft. There's South American witchcraft. There's all kinds of things. And if you want to look up stuff like Santeria, that's a southern Cuban, somewhat through the Dominican Republican area of using sort of pagan African work mixed with Catholicism, which is interesting. And then there's a specific type of work that's done in Brazil and South America that's still, again, a mixture of some Catholicism and African beliefs. And also voodoo or voodoo is the same. You find that in Haiti, sometimes in the south part of the United States, and that is also African-based, and that is pagan-based. So when we say pagan, pagano was the Roman word for a country dweller. And I guess through time, that got pinned onto witches, and it got pinned onto sorcerers and seers and midwives, etc., etc., etc. So that's where that comes from. I was going to put Santeria. Those are things to look up. So that's what I'm putting there. If you're interested in looking things up and reading things, I can also after this, with this video, I will put up my website, or I'll do it soon within the cast here, of where you can find like lots and stuff to read. And if you want books or other books, then I can recommend them. What are my roots? I'm Italian, and my great-grandmother practiced stregaria, which is a form of Italian witchcraft. That's something else you can look up. Also, I am initiated a Gardnerian Wiccan. I am initiated into the path of Wicca itself. That's my cuckoo clock, ignore it. And I am also initiated into an Italian Roman version of high magic, as well as my own work that I do that's eclectic. So yeah, I'm a mixture of things. My roots are in Italy and in Ireland, and that's because that's where my ancestors come from. I was attracted to Wicca because of its Celtic nature, and because of my mother's family being Irish, and also quite psychic. That's a psychic branch over there. My great-grandmother was a tarot card reader, a palm reader, and I learned how to do that when I was a little girl through my grandmother. And they were both advisors, or at least my great-grandmother was more so a neighborhood type of a witch. Did she do spells? No. They were more Catholic, and they didn't believe in doing magic. They just read for people and help people that way. So those are my roots. What are your roots, Yulia? Do you have roots in witchcraft? If you do, let me know what they are so I can address them if I need to, or we can ask questions about that as a group. There's other people here listening too. Also, so we'll go into Samhain. Thank you for sharing. You're welcome. Of course, I said ask away. If you want to learn more about me and my magical path, you can go onto themagicapothecary.com. There's a whole bio there if you want to see. Anyway, so Samhain. So we're going to start talking about Samhain, or I'm going to start talking about Samhain, because I can't hear you, but I can see you. And then I'll branch off into other places. So if you have other questions and you want to help direct this conversation, please feel free. Samhain. So I'm going to click here so I have my list of things that I make sure I don't lose for you guys. So as I said, it was pronounced Samhain or Samhain. Depends on how you want to put the accent. And so it's really supposed to be in and around, I say supposed to be because we're going to talk about astrology in a second, but it's in and around what we call in America Halloween. So Halloween means Hallows Eve, which we kind of know. We've seen that around. And that is really when it takes place. It's the Sabbats, which is what they are called, Sabbats in Wicca, take place starting sundown the night before, just like you would find in the Jewish religion. The Sabbath or the holiday begins at the sundown. So our sundown on the 31st of October is when we call it Samhain. And in Wicca, we also consider this our new year. And here's why. In the Wheel of the Year of Wicca, I'm gonna put one up, which is kind of a cool one. I just found it. He was looking at me, so I'm gonna put it up for you guys to look at. If you want to click on that link while I'm talking, feel free. Okay. So this is just a piece of what it tells you when the moon is. This is a Celtic website. It's really nice, and he has on there Samhain is of November 1st, which is when it happens. So midnight on the 31st or midnight on the 1st is the time. So this is the witches' Sabbath of Samhain. Okay, and also it wasn't just witches; it was everyone actually. And in Ireland, they still practice. Some of these holidays are still done and called what they are. Like if you see on August 1st, Lugnasa, which is the first harvest holiday, still practiced there. It's still called Lugnasa. And in England, we're basing a lot of this thought. And in northern Europe, they still celebrate these days. So in Wicca, we have cross-quarter days, and those are Yule, Ostara, Litha, and Mabon. Those are holidays that happen in the change of season, solstices and equinoxes in the middles. And then there are other days that are in the center of those, and one of those happens to be Samhain. So this was also called mid-fall in tradition. And what it is the third and final harvest. Lugnasa on August 1st is the first harvest. If you imagine farmers bringing in crops, this was the first harvest of corns and fruits, wheats. And the second harvest is Mabon. Mabon is what we kind of know as equinox, the first day of fall. We call it September 21st. And that is a second harvest. And that's more you have these things coming in, more fruits, more gourds, things like potatoes, root vegetables, all coming in. So that's the second harvest. And the third harvest is Samhain. And Samhain is what we're talking about today. And that's called the meat harvest, actually. This is a harvest when animals were harvested, killed for their meat. Any animals that might not make it through the winter were killed. And every plant and anything that was out was taken in because people believed, and they still do, that when the frost comes, everything's a goner. So we want to make sure we bring it all in, we harvest in. So when we look at this summer solstice, this is a really cool thing. It tells us exactly when these dates and times are based on the moon and the timing of the moon. So you can start to see on the side of that website, if you take a look at it, it says like winter solstice on December 21st, 1628, that's in England. So that's the time that it exactly happens, okay? So we have to think about that too. When is exactly Samhain? Well, Samhain is really more a season than it is a day. So this is a harvest season. So between October 31st and early December or so, we have a lot of change going on, and we have a lot of things dying, things coming into harvest, and this is why traditionally people have used this day to celebrate the dead. So that's what this is. This is the Day of the Dead. That's become a more common thing. We see that around, I think, more because it's a Mexican thing, and we see sugar skulls, and we see really elaborate puppets sometimes and things around on the internet and other places. So people are starting to know what the Day of the Dead is in the Mexican tradition and in the South American tradition. But it's not only just there that this happens. This also happens all around the world, but we'll go back to Samhain because this is what we're talking about, since we're talking about Wicca. It's really not proven that this has Celtic origins, by the way. It's just a northern holiday. It certainly happens or did happen in Scotland, the Isle of Man, Cornwall, all through Brittany, which is northern France, on the right across from England, and in Galicia, which is a sort of a part of Spain. So this is why they call it a Celtic holiday. The Celts themselves came up from, they say, India all through Europe and made a sort of a cyclical turn up into Scotland through Ireland and England. So that's supposedly we've carried this holiday and this type of thinking and these gods and this pantheon from that point on. So let's see. There's a lot of mythology surrounding this day. If you wanted to, you could look those up about gods and goddesses. It's also talking about, there's a lot of things that talk about why we make jack-o'-lanterns and they used to use turnips, which when a turnip is cut up and put outside, it looks a lot worse than a pumpkin. It looks really like a skull. So why are we decorating with skulls? Let's go to the skulls. I have somewhere here. I have a little here. I have a little dead guy, and I have on my shirt this idea. All right, so the shirt actually tells us a lot. We talk about this beautiful young girl dancing with death. Okay, why is she dancing with death? Well, because she is, and because we all are. At every moment of life, we are dying. And our ancestors were pretty okay with that idea and didn't feel like they needed to hide death, and they couldn't hide death. It was everywhere around them all of the time, and they accepted it because children died quite frequently, people died in childbirth quite frequently, and it was a common thing for people to deal with. Here, we sort of hide from it a little and don't want to really pay too much attention to it. But if you're a Wiccan or you are a pagan and you want to celebrate this day, or you're thinking about being pagan or Wiccan, this is an interesting day to jump on the wheel of the year, like I say. The wheel of the year has 8 Sabbats, 8 spokes, 8 Sabbath dates. So if you're jumping on now, or if you're thinking about it, or if you want to research it now, it's a good time to think about why you want to do that and how you're going to do that. I just did a whole talk about Mabon just a few weeks ago because we were talking about that holiday, but now we're talking about Samhain. It came up fast this fall. So Mabon is about, abundance. It's our Thanksgiving. It's a pagan Thanksgiving. It's the old-fashioned idea of harvest, and still there are a lot of holidays, specifically Jewish holidays, that still happen around that time of year. So we're still celebrating the harvest in many different ways, in many different religions and traditions all around the world. That's something else to say too. Wicca is a religion. It is a religion. It's not, witchcraft is not a religion. That's something to think about. Witchcraft is not a religion. Witchcraft is a craft. And if you're interested in craft, I do have a spellcraft class that I do once a month. You can look for that, or you can join that class, group here on Facebook, and you can listen to those, because in that I specifically go through how you make spells, how you use magic. Now, in only the most practical sense. There's other things I hadn't gone into in that bunch, but I might next year, so we'll see. But anyway, witchcraft is a craft. We're talking about creating candles, spells, or rope spells, or incantations for spells, or trying to focus one's energy to achieve what you want in the world. That's specific work. Divination is tarot or pendulums or palm reading, or as I said, leaf reading or face reading, or just psychic work in general. That's divination, looking into why things happened, or why they happened, why they are happening, or why they might happen in the future. Mediumship is something else entirely. There are people that speak to the dead. That has nothing to do with witchcraft at all, in any way, shape, or form. Also, let's get this done. It's the Day of the Dead, so I'll say it. Witches may believe in the devil and may work with him, I don't know, but Wiccans do not. I do not believe in the devil. I do not. It's a Christian myth that I have nothing to do with. My ancestors had nothing to do with, and Wicca has nothing to do with. It's a lot of misconceptions about these things. Just like there are any religion out there. People have fears and closed-mindedness about a lot of things, but Wicca is not about the devil. I don't believe in it. All Wiccans, no Wiccans do. We believe and work with ancient gods and goddesses. What is that? Deity. We're talking about understanding that within the nature on this planet and beyond, there are forces beyond our understanding in some ways, and also beyond our well, not beyond anything. I shouldn't even say the word beyond, because it's within us. But there is a feminine force and a masculine force of the universe, of all things. And people happen to have in the past called those things goddesses and gods. So Wiccans choose based on, well, if you're Wiccan, there's really just one god and one goddess that you work with. But if you are a witch, many witches choose to work with different pantheons of gods and goddesses. Some people work with the Roman gods and goddesses, or Greek, or Celtic, or Norse, and whatever. It depends on what calls to you. And a lot of the times, it has nothing to do with ancestry. Sometimes it does. There are African gods and goddesses. There are Asian gods and goddesses. There are Hindu gods and goddesses. And if you start to research them, you start to realize that they're kind of a lot of them alike. And there's a saying in witchcraft or Wicca that all gods are one god, all goddesses are one goddess, and both are everything. So that's what Wiccans deal with. There's a lot of information online. I can't tell you where it is because I'm initiated, and I'm not allowed to tell you where it is. I can only tell you certain things. Once you're initiated into Wicca, you can't talk about a lot of stuff. You make a blood oath stating you'll never do it, so I'm not going to. But if you are wanting to find information, there are other people who have broken their oaths, and they're all over the internet. You can just find them. And you can find out everything that goes on if you want to. I'm not leading you there, though. That's your business. So anyway, back to gods and goddesses. So no, we don't believe in the devil and at all. At all. The idea that there are witches roaming the earth on Halloween, drinking the blood of innocents, and having sex with the devil is a purely Christian myth. It has nothing to do with anything that's real. Never been to a Sabbath where there was a devil or even a goat. Yes, some people like to practice naked, and that's called skyclad. And the reason they do that, it has nothing to do with sexuality at all. It has everything to do with being free and having nothing between you and your energy able to flow better without clothing. And you're naked and just who you are in the sight of the god and goddess without anything. No decoration of clothing. Yes, there is a sexual aspect to some magic. There is something called sex magic, and there is sexual thought and work within magical systems of all sorts. But it is not required. It's not a cult. Nobody's demanding anything. It's of your own free will and consent. So all of that stuff. I haven't participated in anything like that, and I don't choose. I'm probably not ever going to. It's not something I'm interested in. I also don't believe in, nor do Wiccans believe in, animal sacrifice at all. At all. I'm very adamant about that. Wiccans do not do animal sacrifice. There are types of religions that are pagan that do, but it's not Wicca. So if you're interested in that or want to know about that, please do look that up. But it's nothing to do with Wicca. It has nothing to do with blood. We have nothing to do with innocence or babies or all this crazy stuff. There was a book called the Malus Maleficarum, which people who were hunting witches in the Middle Ages used to find out who a witch was. And I'm going to find it for you here so you can look that up. Maleficarum. I don't know how you spell that, but I'll find it. Oh, here it is. I have a Wikipedia entry about this. And it's actually, I think it's a pretty good one from what I remember looking at this once before. Hi, Krista, how are you? Good to see you here. Thank you. I'm glad you came in. If you missed anything, by the way, talking-wise, you can always go back and listen from the beginning. This will be up in the group, no big deal. And you can always fast forward if it's stuff you're not interested in. But we're talking about, somebody had asked what my path was, and I'm telling her about what it is and what Wicca is. And I'm not even sure she's still here, but she might be. Julia, if you're still here, let me know. Anyway, so we'll look back to Samhain. Samhain happens at a specific time. So if I look for the astrological Samhain 2017 on my lovely trusty Google, it will tell me exactly time it was. It's going to be exactly. No, I don't see it here. No. Samhain, November 7th at 5:25 p.m. in Greenwich Mean Time. So that's interesting. All right. So as I said before, it's a season. It's not just a day. It's a season. The bad thing for me as a Wiccan person who really takes this holiday very seriously, and we'll talk about that in a second, is the annoyance of having Christmas decorations, which represent the return of the sun god to me for Yule, up already while people are still talking to the dead. Not a good thing. All right, so not a good combo. The Day of the Dead, Samhain, Halloween. What are we doing? What are we doing? We're doing several things. So we're talking to the dead. We are saying to our ancestors back to the beginning of time, hi, hope you're well. I know you're there. Do you want to talk? In England, in Italy, actually, during this time, they go to, a lot of the times they don't bury their dead in the ground. They put them in, crypts. So they will literally, and in Mexico and in Spain and South America and different places throughout the world, they will go to the gravesite at this time of the year, take the skeleton out, clean it, feed it, and have dinner with it or lunch with it in the cemetery. So again, honoring your dead, making sure that they're comfortable. This is not so far from an Egyptian idea of putting your dead in a crypt where they have everything they need in the afterlife. Well, you go visit them on this day of the Dead. And if you are Catholic, you may know that this is an important holiday in the Catholic religion too. You have All Saints Day, All Souls Day, and this is the time you pray for the dead. Same thing. By the way, Catholicism is kind of pagan. Just saying. Well, we have cats. So we're talking to the dead. We're honoring our ancestors. We're remembering our ancestors. One of the first things you might want to consider doing is putting up an altar for the dead or an ancestor's altar. You can start that today, and you can leave it up until November, middle November, and then you can decorate for Christmas. By that time, this influence is coming away, and you'll start to feel it. Yeah, literally will feel it. We are now also in the astrological sign of Scorpio, and Samhain is in the middle of that. So Scorpio is about, the underworld and about death and about the other side and about communicating with other beings that are not here or things that aren't apparent. So, okay, great, Yulia. You know what? I would love to learn more about the Slavic pantheon. That sounds really interesting to me as well. I'm partially Northern European, and some of that stuff really appeals to me. So if you want to send me a link as to where I can read more about that, I would really like it. And I'm sure everybody else here would also. Thanks for being here again. So talking about your altar, what you might want to do is take a table or a placement, and it doesn't have to be spooky unless you want it to be spooky. I mean, that's totally up to you. But you just take a place and take pictures, if you have them, of your ancestors or representations of them, and put them out and talk to them. Because if you do, you just might hear answers back. You might not hear them in your ear or see it, because you may not be psychically trained to do that, but you can then start to have dreams about your ancestors passed away, and that includes animals. Okay, so every one of us, here's my shirt again, is dancing with death. Everybody here is dancing with death. And at this time of the year, we acknowledge that, saying, okay, I know that I'm alive. I know that I am in this body, but I also know that this body will turn to rot. That's why we have skeletons everywhere, to remind us of death. Death is everywhere, right around the corner, right on top of us at all times. We are all dying, will die, and that's that. And our ancestors knew better than to hide from it. This is, on one hand, a dark and scary holiday, but on the other hand, a quite joyous one, because right around the corner, we talk about being reborn, resurrection, coming again. Christmas comes, or Yule in my world comes, and the light returns, and we go on. We come back again. The God himself has died, but he was reborn again, the sun, on Christmas. So, or Yule. So it makes, the wheel of the year represents not just holidays where we actually harvest or plant things, which they absolutely do, but they also represent phases of life. So now we are in the phase of death. It's just as we are outside. If you walk around, you see the leaves are turning darker colors in the northern hemisphere. By the way, at this point in time in the southern hemisphere, it's Beltane, which is like a beautiful flowery holiday of spring and sex and fertility. But they're in a different thing down there. But up here in the north, things are dying and it's getting colder. As a matter of fact, today in New York, it got really cold and weirdly dark, and the sun is setting earlier, and things are dying and changing. Pisces, Yulia, is another thing entirely. That's in the spring, that's in the late winter, early spring. So that's all different kinds of holidays than Samhain. Samhain is a Scorpion holiday. It's about the death. It's about darkness. It's about the underworld. It's about lying in the womb of our mother before we're reborn again. So our ancestors who have passed on are there. They're in the womb of the mother. Whether or not they're buried, they are in the womb of the mother, even if they were cremated or put to sea. So they've gone back to the mother, gone back to the earth. So this is when they say the veil is thinnest and we can actually speak to them. So if you would like to set this altar up, you can, and then you can decorate it any way you like. You may want to put skeletons. You may not. Some people make it very beautiful and use, don't have to use black. You don't have to use anything creepy. You can, all you like. Whatever makes you happy is really what you want to do. Decorate this little table or this table with candles if you like them. I always say this, if you use candles, please put them out when you're not at home. Thank you. Don't leave candles on when you're not home, period. Also, you can put out offerings for them on this table. I like to put offerings outside. Now, I don't always want to put out food that my ancestors would eat or liked, because that can be questionable. I don't want to really put lasagna on my stoop, even though like the squirrels might like it. I usually put stuff like fruit, nuts, things like this that can, or water, milk, things that are there for them, alcohol sometimes in a little container, and I leave it out the night of. Oh, sorry about the bird, that's sad. Yeah. Yeah, return back to the earth. So Yulia's talking about this bird she encountered that passed away, and that she had to bring it back to the earth. That's right, and that's where we all go, where the bird went. You'll notice too, you'll see things at this time of the year, if you prowl Facebook or the internet, where people start to die again, and animals too at this time of the year, who's not going to make it through the winter. This is usually when they don't hang on much longer. And not saying everybody, but this is a time when the energy is towards death. All right, so you can also, if you wanted to, on the 31st, sit with those ancestors and talk to them for a while and ask them for, if you want help, or if you want information, or if you just want to talk to them. I mean, this is a time you actually can. Everybody at this point in time is somewhat mediumistic. Every one of us can somehow communicate more with those who have passed, and you want to honor them. And what a lot of people who are Wiccan do is you do a Samhain ritual to honor the day. A lot of times you go to something called a dumb supper. I've held a couple of dumb suppers in my house where you make an elaborate dinner and people eat in silence. They do not speak. We speak before, and we set the intention that we're going to speak to our ancestors, and people get a big plate of food and leave some for their ancestors, and then they talk to them in their own way, but only silently. and it can be very intense. So if you want to do that, that's a good thing to do, or you can find a place to do that. If you're in New York City, it's not a dumb supper, but it's a supper on Halloween or a Samhain day at Catland Books in Brooklyn. I'm going to be there with my husband, and then they have a ritual after, a Samhain ritual after. It's a Tuesday, and it goes until 1 a.m. So, but it's the day, and I want to celebrate on the day. So, tired or not, we're going. Anyway, so people do this. They also do feasts where they have a lot of, quote, meat, or even if you're vegetarian, like meats of the earth, root vegetables, and heavier foods, heavy foods, because it's a matter of taking in your larder and saying, okay, I've got this harvest. This is my last harvest. This is the last day I can really enjoy my harvest. At least our ancestors felt this way when they didn't have refrigeration or supermarkets. And this is the last time before May, or late March, actually, I shouldn't say May, late March, that I'll be without, with nothing. And maybe until like February before I even see milk again. So this is what the reality of our ancestors dealt with. And when you're Wiccan or Pagan, you try to live with the earth itself and say, okay, at this time of the year, let me take in the fruits of this harvest. And many people who don't eat meat on this day. Okay, thanks, Yulia. Watch after work. Thank you for being here. So that's something you might want to do, prepare a feast. It doesn't have to be, again, on the 31st. Like I said, November 7th, astrologically is Samhain. So I probably will celebrate that day too in some way. So that's when the power is at its height. Okay, you're at a certain place within the Scorpion constellation. That's the time you want to say, okay, I'm going to go for this, and I'm going to really sit with my ancestors. So you can look that up. I looked at this thing here. I'll put this is not the best thing I've ever seen, but at least it's got some information on it, and you can also go from there to other places that might have more. But this is where I found the time. I don't know if it's exactly right. If you have a farmer's almanac or any kind of an ephemeris, E-M-P-H, ephemeris, you will be able to find out exactly when what the timing is exactly. All right, so ancestors. Why do we dress up? That's an interesting thing. Why do people dress up on Halloween? Well, most of the times people dress up as two things. One, demons, dark things, murderous things, chainsaw massacre people, creatures of all sorts and types. And also, it's a time to express oneself as well, your inner being. That's why you get all kinds of mixture of things like, a sexy, murderous, the Halloween witch nurse, whatever. People bring out their inner something, and that's what they tend to do. I tend to go all the way witchcraft, and my version of it with cloak and lace and jewelry and perfume, and of course my pointed hat. Where would I be without my pointed hat? There's a reason for that. There was this thing circulating around the internet about why women who made beer, because women were always in charge of making beer in the household, or women who made that and made money at that, why they wore pointed hats and why they were called witches. And you can look for that article online. Why women who wore pointed hats were called witches when they made beer. It's a very interesting thing. Again, back to the idea of witches being people who did something. Fermentation was considered magic, because you took, a bunch of stuff and you put it in a dark, and a few days later it was bubbling over and delicious and made you drunk. So that's a potion. By the way, potions are anything. Vitamins are potions. My stew on the stove is potion. Anything that's mixed together, so with water, is a potion. So we use potions all the time. We just don't call them that anymore. So back to that for a second, because it came up earlier. What is this idea of magic at this time of the year? Well, magic is anything that transforms from one thing to another. That's magic, right? So a plant growing out of a seed, that's magic. A baby being born from a woman's body, that's magic. And anybody who helped those things along were called magicians or wizards or sorceresses or sorcerers, or the word witch, that comes from the word witche or wicke in Old English, which means someone who can bend things to their will. And that's what we're doing when we're doing magic. I happen to make, when I remember, I should get back in there and do it. I happen to make kombucha, which is a Japanese fermentation of tea. And all I do is make tea. And I put this moldy thing inside of it, and it makes kombucha. So in ancient times, I would be considered some kind of a great sorceress because I could make this other probiotic, healthy, good tasting, yummy, little bit alcoholic drink out of tea. I can transform one thing to another. It's not me that's doing it, but my will is. I will it to happen by putting this stuff together. That's magic. I also will, if you are making bread. Bread is a magical act, and bakers were considered magic because they could make, you don't have to buy yeast in a package. You can make your own yeast come to you through the air and your flour, and make something called sourdough and mix it up with some more flour, and you have bread. And even the baking of bread was considered magic because you had this lump of mushy stuff that became bread, and that would sustain you. Cooking was considered magic, and people who could cook well were magicians. All right, so even to this day, we honor chefs, and we honor people who make beer and wine, and even doctoring. Herbalists were magicians. They were considered magicians. So if you're interested in this path, just know that there's a beginning start. Today or this week is a good way to go and take baby steps. We're talking about an ancestral religion that is extremely in depth and has a lot of branches to it. If you decide to be Wiccan, I suggest you start looking up Gerald Gardner and his doings. There's a book called Witch Father, which is about his life, a biography. It's a good one. And then also you can just look up his work. You can look up what it is. Be well aware that, as I said before, not all Wiccans are witches because that's what they're called once they take their initiations. But not all witches are Wiccan. And Wiccans don't practice witchcraft sometimes, or many of them don't. What? Right. Not so simple. So it's not something that I can give you an easy spoonful answer. As I said before, too, this is a great time of year to dress up and let your inner sorceress or sorcerer wizard out and walk with the dead and feel the change of season and really honor our ancestors and really think about your own mortality. And it also makes you think this is, a lot of people don't like this dark time of the year. A lot of people hate the fact that the sun is going down earlier. But I will say to you very clearly, I used to be one of those people until I decided I was not, I was pagan, I was a witch or a Wiccan. And I realized that this time of the year is the most beautiful time of the year, because even though we're talking about death and we're talking about darkness, we're talking about sleep, we're talking about rest, we're talking about a breath in before the breath out. This is, if you know the circle of yin and yang, I can look for that, so you can look at that. Yin and yang is an easy way to look at it. This is an Asian version of it, and what I'm talking about, but it's very simple if you see it this way. Here you go. See if I can just throw it over here for you. No, I'll look for it later. I'll put it up. I can find I can find a. I don't know what's on this article. I didn't read it, so forgive me if it's weird, but here's just a great picture of yin and yang in here, so you can see it. Okay, so you can click on that and you can see what I'm talking about. Black and white. And it's a circle, a continual circle. Wiccans, if we're talking about Samhain, we're talking about Wiccans, or witches who practice a form of Wiccan behavior or religion, or pagans in general, kind of all honor this day all over the world, and people in general all over the world honor this day. Believe that life is a circle. It's not all just we go to the edge of life and fall off the cliff and we don't come back. A lot of witches or Wiccans believe in reincarnation, as do Hindus. and Buddhists and a lot of people, and believe in resurrection. So at this point of the year, it's a time of stopping, a time of death, a time of sleep, a time of no growth. You know, even though it's cold and we're going to have snow and whatever goes on up here in the north, as does in the southern hemisphere, the opposite time of the year, we have cold times. We have fallow times when nothing grows because they can't. The sun has we've come further away from the sun. The earth is tipping this way away from the sun before it comes back again, which will be doing that again on the solstice. So the equinox, we were here, which was September 21st. Now we're like this. And then we're going to do this a little bit back, and that's Yule. The earth not only goes around the sun, but it also does this like a top. It goes back and forth a little bit, yeah, everywhere it goes. All right, so at this point, seeds are in the earth. Lots of them. If you look around, things are falling and dropping off of trees and plants and stuff. There's seeds everywhere. People are sneezing. They have allergies because there's seeds everywhere. And those seeds are gripping into the earth and into the dirt itself, into the earth. And they will be covered with snow and ice and water and all kinds of things. And they will open again in spring. So the same thing happens to us. And that's what we're talking about here. Our ancestors are in the earth. They are pods. They are feeding the earth. They have fed the worms. They have fed, you know, the maggots. They have fed various animals and beings under the earth or in the earth. Even if they were ashes, they still fed something. They revitalized the earth, the planet herself. Herself, yes. Wiccans believe that the earth itself is a goddess, and they are the seed, and from them what comes? You, yes. You are part of that. You are continually part of that. You have come from them and growing forward. Also, they're back. They've never really died. No one really dies. That's why we can still speak to them. That's a hard concept because we've been taught here and in Western thought, like, oh, you die, you're done. You die, you're done. No, you come back. So at this point, we honor this death cycle. We honor this quiet time. And we accept that. We accept that people we love and animals and beings we love are there, have done this transition, have gone through the veil, have gone over the river Styx, S-T-Y-X, and the Greek word. And we're able to speak to them, or they've come back, or I'm them, or they are me, or they inside of me, and they're around me, and they're everywhere. Every one of my ancestors lives within my DNA. So they live. They cannot die. Their energy lives on this planet still and in the universe, always. So even though we're honoring the dead and our ancestors, and it could be a really sad day, it's really not. It's actually a celebratory day, and Wiccans call this New Year. It's the beginning of the new year. The beginning of, you go through the transition and then you're reborn. You're within the womb of the earth, and then you come out again at Yule, which I can't wait to talk to you about Yule, because Yule is a great holiday too. Even though it is Christmas and all the things that go with Christmas are there, Christmas did not come first. Did not come first. And Halloween did not come first. Samhain has been here, and the Day of the Dead has been here since the beginning of time. So I welcome you to do things like, if you're in New York City, go into the Museum of Natural History and take a look at your ancestors and their beliefs. There are things there you can look at. There's things in the Metropolitan Museum of Art that you can look at. And also mummies. There's plenty of those in the Brooklyn Museum and in the Metropolitan Museum of Art that you can take a look at death. Go. I know that Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn has tours, trolley tours through the cemetery, which I'm going to hope to get to this year. Or don't go on a trolley tour. Just go there. Take yourself a little lunch pack and go. That is, by the way, the highest point in Brooklyn. And from there, you can see most of Manhattan and parts of the borough of Brooklyn. And it's beautiful there if you're in New York City. If you are not, then there are tons of, I know, cemeteries, crypts, mausoleums, places where the dead are buried and kept that you should visit wherever you happen to be. I know that in Paris, they have labyrinths, as they do in Rome, as they do all through Europe. I know that in England, you can visit the dead kings and queens if you feel like you want to go down that path and their crypts, or you can just go to regular old-fashioned cemeteries all through everywhere on the planet. If you can visit Native American burial grounds, you can do anything like that. But I would suggest you do that if you can at this time of the year. Remember that everything you see will die, that everyone you know will die, and everything will change. And just honor that and say, that's okay. You know, life is about change, and life is about life, and death is a part of life, and life is a part of death, yin and yang. Inside of the black of the yin and yang, which is the yin part, this is the inward part, the place where we are right now, the dark part, there is a dot of white, which means rebirth. And in the white part, there's a dot of black, which means death. So whatever side of the circle you're on, you're looking at the other at the same time. This is a great time of the year to also experience and look at art that has to do with death, movies that have to do with that, anything that has to do with this transition. And also, it is Scorpio time, and if you want to be Wiccan and or a witch, you need to think about astrology a little bit and see, what does that mean? What is exactly Scorpio? What does that mean? Besides just a person who's like sexy, which is what people might come up with. What does it mean? What is Scorpio? What does that mean? Jupiter at this time is also in Scorpio. Jupiter in Scorpio and during Samhain is a pretty intense thing. I feel it. I know a lot of astrologers feel it and know it's around. We all kind of feel it. There's sort of a exhale. There's sort of a large release. There's sort of a calm. That's like a deep sleep coming upon all of us. Sure, it's because it's colder. Sure, it's because it's darker. And that's why it is what it is at this time of the year. We all are experiencing the release of things. So also on your altar and with your work on Samhain between the 31st and November 7th, what would it be that you want to release? Could be weight, a habit, a person, a job, a belief, a hair color, anything. What do you want to let go of? What is it that is blocking you or stopping you or causing any kind of a problem for you? Or what is this something that you have that you want to release? A lot of people want to, maybe you want to clean out your house. Maybe it's time to do that. Maybe it's time to start over fresh. Clean out your refrigerator. Become a vegetarian. Stop being a vegetarian. I don't know, whatever it is that you think you need to do to get ready for the next part of your life. So that's it, I think, of my talk tonight. Anybody have any questions? This is a good time now to ask me. Did I put up the thing about the Malleus Maleficarum? I think I did. Let me check. No, I did not. Here, this is the thing I was talking about. This book people use to persecute and hunt witches. This is a written book by men during the Middle Ages. Men, I say men. Mm-hmm. And it was used to see who was a witch and who wasn't a witch. If you take a look at that, it's just the most ridiculous thing that ever was written. That's for sure. But it's very scary and very important for you to look at if you are wondering what the heck I'm talking about as far as that stuff. All right, so I have nothing else to say if nobody has any questions. So I'm going to get off and say goodnight. Thank you very much for being here. And may you have a blessed Samhain. May the ancestors come to you, and may you always know they are around you, and may you be blessed tenfold with their love and support. So mote it be. Have a great Samhain. Bye-bye. Nice talking to you.